All right, welcome. Thank you all for being here, and appreciate that you're taking the time to share your practice, and hope you appreciate that you're taking the time to take care of your body um, and incorporate some mindfulness into your life. The practice today is has less of a specific emphasis and more about how yoga can address a lot of different things, all within a 1 hour practice. Restorative poses, flexibility, joint mobility, strength, core strength, and even motor control. And by motor control, I mean ability to control your body in a very mindful and purposeful way. And for your purposes, our purposes, for you as rowers, it'll be about controlling the core, the pelvis, the posture, and some other things probably too. So as far as props go, if you have two yoga blocks, grab them. If not, you can get by without it. The strap today is only if you need it for the quad stretch. So if you find it difficult to reach back and find the foot. I am going to be using the blanket to pad my knees, but also to elevate my hips here at the very beginning. We are starting in some stillness, and I'm going to start in the seated position. But if you'd like to start lying down, feel free, and then we will start the movement from a seated position. So if it's the end of the day or your back is tired, this might be an opportunity to take a few minutes to lie down, spine parallel to the earth. If you're feeling like you want to start in the seated position, you could be cross-legged or legs out in a straddle or heels underneath you. Hands resting on the knees or the thighs. The palms down has more of a calming effect on your body and your nervous system. Palms up, allowing you to be open to energy. So whatever feels right to you. Perhaps you close your eyes, but not necessary. And we'll take the first few moments here to bring your attention to your breath. And the breath is something that we're often not very intentional about or even aware of, unless we're short of breath or have breathing issues. In fact, I find a lot of my patients, physical therapy patients, have a tendency to hold their breath at times. So over the next hour, we're going to be very intentional with our breathing. Breathing through the nose, both inhale and exhale. So it's different from other movement practices in that sense. Feeling the expansion in the body as you breathe in, that contraction, so more passively as you breathe out. Start to lengthen out your breath, slow it down. It's longer inhales and exhales, but not big, deep breaths or effortful breathing. If you're sitting on your next inhale, sit up taller, reaching the top of the head towards the ceiling. On your exhale, relax the shoulders and the hips, but keep the length in the spine. If you choose, bring your palms together, press your thumbs into your breastbone, setting an intention for the practice. So remembering the reason why you've shown up, why you rolled out your yoga mat, why you have set aside this time today. Is it about releasing tension? Is it about getting stronger, improving your posture, being a better rower, preventing injury, whatever it is? Bring this thought to the front of your mind and breathe with intention. We'll release the hands and open the eyes. So I'm going to start from a seated position and do some cat and cow movements of the spine. If the seated position doesn't work in your body, you can always come to hands and knees and do the same movements here. I'm bringing my hands to the knees, and on the inhale, lift the breastbone, bring the gaze up towards the ceiling. As you exhale, round the back and drop the chin. So breathing in, lift the chest, broadening through the collarbones. Breathing out, back rounding, drop the chin towards the chest. We'll do a few more here. We're just starting, we're warming up, so no need to force movement or go through any painful parts of motion. And perhaps you start to notice not just the spinal movements, but the pelvis moving. So kind of the tipping forward of the pelvis or the hips, and then the tipping backwards of that pelvis. And as you tip forward, lifting the chest, feel the pressure move into the sitting bones. As you round the back and tip the pelvis backward, feel the pressure behind the sitting bones. That's that rolling over the pelvis, rolling over the hips movement. Here we've combined it with some spinal movements. And inhaling, we'll bring this back up into that upright position. And then we're going to sweep both legs off to the side. You could move that blanket out from underneath you here. We're leaning away from the legs onto the hand or maybe onto the forearm if that wrist pressure isn't feeling good to you. The free arm, we're reaching it out over the outer leg, and we sweep it across both legs and then up overhead for a side stretch. And then reverse that motion, bring it down and over to that outer leg. So the breathing is inhale, sweep it down and over the head, and then exhale, sweep it down again and away from you. You could keep it with hips grounded, or as you sweep the arm, lift the hips, push forward, and then lower. We'll do a few more here. Hip lift is optional, but it starts to open up your hip flexors, or at least the hip flexor of that leg furthest away from you. One more. And a little hip mobility here. And then we'll swivel the feet off to the other side. Leaning away from your legs or coming down onto the forearm. The free arm is reaching out away from you. Cross it over both legs, up overhead to stretch through the side body, and then lower, reverse, bring it down and away. So the breath is inhale, sweep it across overhead, exhale to lower. Maybe you add the hip lift, so you push through the shins, hips forward, and then lower. Lowering the hips back down, and we'll make our way to hands and knees. Now I'm going to use my blanket here to pad my knees, just because they're kind of bony and that padding feels good. And I don't see any reason to make myself suffer in that regard. And we're starting here with our knees out a little wider than the hips. And this is going to stabilize our pelvis and the lumbar spine so that when we rotate, we are rotating through the mid and upper back, and through the neck. So we're pressing down through one hand and sweep the other arm up towards the ceiling, looking in that direction. And then we thread this arm underneath the other, peeking maybe underneath the supporting arm. And then unwind. We inhale, sweep out, open up, and then we exhale to thread it under. We'll do a couple more here. So mobility for that mid and upper back, the thoracic spine, and shoulder blade movement. As we sweep the arm up, shoulder blade moving towards the spine. As we thread it under, moving away. Coming up here, switching sides. Inhale the arm up. Exhale, thread it under. Might feel different on this side, and that might have to do with your shoulder or that shoulder blade freedom of movement, or perhaps more likely that mid upper back where the stiffness is, where the rotation is allowed. Coming back up here to the hands and knees position. We're walking our knees in so they are underneath the hips again. And I'm working here on core strength. And I'm going to use my yoga block. If you don't have one, just imagine or pretend that you have one. We're starting here from tabletop. And I have my hands flat, so kind of a 90-degree bend at the wrist. If this doesn't work for your wrist, for whatever reason, it could be a loose fist, so the wrist is in neutral. You could be on your forearms or forearm on a block. We're going to have one arm up, or option to have one arm up, so you might just need the one block under the forearm here. So first, we firm the belly. So you're making a solid wall of your abdominal muscles. And then lengthen the spine. So think top of the head and tailbone reaching away from each other. And we're reaching our right leg back and the toes point down. Now you could keep this at just leg and not add arm. Keep the hips level, whatever you're doing. And then I'm going to hold the block in the left hand and reach that arm forward. So you could stay and hold and breathe. So if you're already struggling, I'd stay here. Or adding movement. So I'm going to pull my knee forward and the block to the knee and gently press them together. This is going to engage my core a little bit more. And then inhale, stretch it out long into the bird dog. And I'm changing it up here. So I'm bending the knee, but foot comes up. And I reach the block behind, block and heels gently press together to engage the hamstrings. Inhale, reach long bird dog. Exhale, pull under, block and knee, press. Inhale, reach it out long, lengthening the spine. Exhale, reach behind, block to heel, press. Inhale, reach it out long. Lower the block, lower the knee. Perhaps you wag your tail a little bit, do a cat-cow from here, or sit back or stand on the knees. You could shake out the wrists or roll the shoulders. So that core and spinal strength here, this is one of the best ways to kind of combine both of those in these variations of bird dogs. Helpful for keeping the spine healthy, but also having, instead of a cat-cow motion in your drive and recovery phase, you've got more stability there when they're stronger in the core and spinal muscles. So of course, we're going to do the other side. Find your tabletop, firm the belly, spine lengthening. This time it's left leg back. Remember, you could do just leg. You don't have to add arm. But if you are, block in the right hand, reach it forward. So reach long. So bird dog is like a hunting dog getting the scent when the tail goes back and the snout goes forward, but we're going to keep our gaze down for now. Keep the hips level as much as possible. Adding movement if you want to add challenge. Exhale, knee and block pull under. Gently press them together very briefly. And then we inhale, reach it out long. Exhale, bend the knee, reach behind, block and heel, press together. Inhale, reach it out long. Exhale, pull it under, block a knee, press. Inhale, into the bird dog. Exhale, bend the knee, reach back. Here's our hamstring and glute maximus activation. Inhale, reach it long. One more time. So hamstrings, underutilized by design in rowing, but when you don't strengthen there, you can create an imbalance around the hips and knees. All right, lower the block, lower the hand. We're going to take a resting position in either a child's or puppy pose. Child's pose is hips over heels, forehead resting down. And that's a great pose for a lot of us, but if you're dealing with hip or knee issues, herniated disc, low bone density in the spine, then you might Try puppy, which is hips over knees, forehead down. Hands could stack under the forehead if it doesn't rest easily. Take a few breaths in whichever of these poses you've chosen. Slowing that breathing down again. Coming back to your intention for the practice. You could certainly stay here longer or making your way up to hands and knees. We are stretching one foot back. The toes are tucked under here. And we're starting with this toe and ankle rocking movement. So shifting forward so the toes bend, and then press the heel back for that ankle to bend. Breathing, inhale, shifting forward, toes bending. Exhale, pressing the heel back, ankle bending, calf stretch. And do a few more here. If this is an area where you're stiff in the joints or the muscles feel tight, go easy. And maybe you do a little bit more movement the more you do as it loosens up. So here, this is toe mobility, ankle mobility exercise. And both of those important in that catch position to have enough bend in the ankle and the toes to come into a tighter position of the catch so you can generate more force from there. Lower that knee down, switch sides. And you might notice stiffness or tightness, one side more than the other. And then we're gonna lower both knees down to the floor. Now I'm setting us up for a down dog. If this is a challenging pose, you might lower your knees after a few breaths coming out of it. You could always come back to the toe rocking because that's one of the great benefits of down dog is that calf stretch, which you can get from a less intense position of the shoulders. But down dog, hands a little forward of shoulders, fingers spread out, lift the hips up and back. Now find that length in your spine. And for some of us with tight hamstrings, tight calves, bending the knees and prioritizing the lengthening of the spine is better than trying to straighten the knees or reach the heels down to the floor. Let the head relax between the upper arms. Take a moment here to pedal the feet. Maybe it's up on toes, release the heels. A little swivel of the heels side to side, lengthening or opening through the side body. So just a little movement here in your down dog. So this is less of a static stretch and a little more dynamic and more joint mobility oriented. Settle into the down dog here, looking forward, and step your left foot between the hands. And if it doesn't get there on the first go, lower that right knee, left hand helping that foot to come forward. We're lowering the back knee here and find your balance and your way up into this upright position of the lunge. I'm going to have you toe heel that left foot wide off of the mat. And then you might need to put the hand down. The back foot, we're rotating in. So the right toes are going to point towards the left side of the mat, coming up here in the upright position. From here, we're doing a tilt backwards of the pelvis. So we're tucking the tailbone under, pull the belly button towards the spine, but reach the top of the head up towards the ceiling. So there's a little bit of core happening here. I'm going to turn so you can see me here from the front. Keep that tailbone tucked under the pelvis tucked and bend through the left knee and then rise back up to upright. So we inhale, bend through the left knee and exhale to upright. Couple more. If you keep that pelvis tucked under, it's actually controlling where the socket of the ball and socket part of the joint is. And we're mobilizing that hip joint. So if you know you have tight hips, hard to get into that catch position, if you have some stiffness, tightness, or even pain, especially on the outer hip, this is a good movement for you to do before activity, before rowing. All right, come on up. And then we're toe heeling that front foot back to center, and the back foot's gonna line up again. So we're more in line with the yoga mat here. Now I'm gonna use both blocks here in each hand, one block in each hand on either side of the front foot. And you might need to wiggle that front foot forward a little bit and or the back knee back. We are shifting the hips back. So you start to open up through the hamstrings, maybe even the calf of this front foot. But then we're digging the front heel in, use the leverage of the heel into the floor to pull the hips forward and open the chest. We'll do that again. We exhale to shift back, dig the front heel into the floor, inhale, pulling it forward. We'll do a few more. That digging the heel in, pulling the hips forward is engaging the hamstring muscles. Rowers have really strong quads typically, and hamstrings not as strong just because they're not as important in the stroke or the repetition of the movements. So here we're using this strengthening to start to bring a little more balance back into the body. We'll stay shifted forward here. Bring the hands down to the floor. And we're stepping this back into a plank position. And I'm going to have you stay in plank, but lower the knees down. Walk the knees out to the outer edge of the yoga mat, or a little wider than your hips. You could stay on your hands or be on your forearms for this. Find a straight line from the knees to the top of the head, lengthening out through there. You could stay here and breathe. I hate holding just stationary plank, so I'm going to add a little movement without trying to let my hips tip side to side. Bring one hand to the opposite shoulder and then lower that hand down. Other side, we inhale, hand to the opposite shoulder, exhale, lower. And this is just a slow motion shoulder tap. If you go super fast, you bring that hand down sooner and you get less core work. All right, both hands down, tuck the toes, hips up and back. Find that down dog. Perhaps you do a few more movements, shake the head, pedal the feet. Looking forward, we step the right foot. Could be between the hands, or we're going to bring it out wide. So it can come out wide of your hands, which might be a little easier transition. Lower that back knee and lift yourself into that upright position. We're toe heeling that right foot out wide. So our right leg is like 45 degrees off to the off of center midline. Rotating that back leg inward. So my left toes are pointing towards the right side of the mat. Again, I'm going to turn so you can see me here from the front. Tuck that tailbone under, belly button towards the spine, but we're not rounding the whole back. So top of the head stays up. And we're bending through that right knee and then rise back up. Inhale, bend through the knee. Exhale, pull it up. 2 or 3 more. Pelvis staying tucked under, that lengthened breath with our movement matching. So we're not going fast, we're appreciating the movement from start to finish as opposed to where we get to at the end. Coming back up, toe heel the feet, the legs back onto the mat in line with the hips. Blocks here on either side of the front foot, or you could be up on fingertips. And you might need a little more space between the front foot and the back knee. So wiggling the foot forward. We shift the hips back, start to open the hamstrings, but shouldn't be a super deep stretch. And then dig that front heel in to pull the hips forward, open the chest. We exhale, shift back. Inhale, dig the heel in, engaging the hamstrings, back of thighs to pull forward. 2 or 3 more. We'll shift forward here on the next one and pause. Lift to the back knee and step the back foot to the front foot. Might be one big step, you might need a few little hops to get there. And find a forward fold. Listening for options. So the ragdoll version, knees bent, upper body draped over the lower body. And this can work for a lot of reasons, but there can be reasons why it's not as great for you. Hamstrings really tight, low bone density, herniated disc. You would do this option, feet wide, butt back, forearms on the thighs. So here, there's no compression going through the spine or the discs, and it's less intense, a hamstring stretch. Either of the poses, you could sway a little forward back. If you're in that ragdoll, you have a few more options, letting the head hang out, shake it out, maybe holding elbows. Take a few more breaths. We'll bring that weight shift into center. Bend the knees a little, look forward, strong legs, inhale, rise up, reaching up, and exhale, hands to prayer at your heart. We'll let this go, shake out your arms, roll the shoulders. So moving that blanket off the mat if you have it, so you don't end up tripping on it. We are coming into mountain pose, which is just a very intentional standing still position. And it's about stability, core engagement, muscles that support the spine and the posture. And we're going to get into it step by step and a little differently than maybe a normal yoga class. So we're starting with our feet about shoulder distance apart, and we're putting a little bend into the knees. So you can see my profile. I'll turn to the side. Keep that little bit of bend and lengthen the tailbone down towards the earth, right? So if your tailbone is tucked under, you tip it back a little bit. If your tailbone is pushed out, you tip it down a little bit so the pelvis levels. At the same time the tailbone reaches down, the top of the head reaches up. So you create space in the waist, space in the neck. Shoulders relaxed, breathe. Keep the tailbone lengthening down and straighten the knees. And walk your feet in so they're underneath your hips here. So we stayed with that intention of the lengthened spine, the tailbone with a plumb line, pulling it down towards the floor, the top of the head with a string pulling you up. So there's space pulling from both directions. So we're going to stay here, but I want you to breathe. And if you turn everything on at like 100%, dial your effort back to like 50 or 60%, right? So you can conserve the energy in the postural muscles because they're more endurance muscles than they are brute strength. So we're keeping the length in the spine and the hips square to the front. Reach both arms forward. Concentrate on keeping the hips square to the front. Pull one elbow back and look in that direction. And then bring that head and arm forward. Other side, hips stay square to the front. We inhale, pull that elbow back, the other elbow back, look towards that side. Exhale, bring it forward. Do that a few more times, alternating sides. Keep the hips square to the front, and that's going to isolate that movement at the mid and upper back. And engage the core, the transverse abdominis muscles, especially as they stabilize the pelvis. Keep the pelvis in position, moving through the thoracic spine, the shoulders, the head, the neck. Last one. Remember this motion. We're going to see it again in a balance. All right, let it go. Swing the arms, shake it out, roll the shoulders. All right, coming up to the front of the mat, and we are coming into good morning. So this is sort of one I've borrowed. This is not really yoga, but I've borrowed from like personal training, fitness. Our feet are again about mat distance or shoulder distance apart. A tiny bend to the knees, and we hinge forward from the hips. Spine stays long. And then to come up, instead of using your quads or instead of just using your quads, I want you to think about your glutes. Squeeze the buttocks to rise up to stand. So we relax the glutes here, tiny bend to the knees, hinge forward from the hips on the inhale. Exhale, squeeze the buttocks, rising up. So we do that again. As you hinge, the butt can turn off, the glutes can turn off, and then they engage to lift the torso. Let's do a few more. So it's not quite the right leg position, but imagine a mid-drive phase. You've come away from the catch, right? You started to straighten the legs, and as you pull the torso back, you want those glutes to engage, right? They are one of the main movers of the torso. If they stay turned off, your back muscles have to do so much work, and you can cause repetitive stress injury to the back, low back especially. Coming on up, pause here, roll the shoulders. So that feeling of those glutes, extending the torso backwards here. We'll stay at the front of the mat, feet are more hip distance apart. Take a big to medium step back here with your left foot. I'm coming into a crescent lunge, back heel up. But if this doesn't work for the toes or your balance, you could shorten the stance and bring the back heel down. Front knee bent over ankle. And we want to, again, think about that mountain pose where we had the tailbone down. If your hip flexors are tight on that left leg, you might have to bend the back knee to get the tailbone to lengthen towards the earth. And then the top of the head reaches up here towards the ceiling. We're going for real hip stability. So there are muscles that run horizontally here around your waist from the pubic bone up to the ribs. Think about these ones that run between the front hip bones and imagine pulling those hip bones towards each other. They don't actually move, but you might engage that core a little bit. Are you breathing? So we're going to keep that core engagement. Hinge forward from your hips. You might be able to straighten the back leg here. Pause when the torso comes in line with that back leg. Firm the belly like we did in that bird dog. A slight chin tuck. Reach the hands towards the back foot. Thumbs down, palms in. And now actively reach the hand. So I think about this as like the cartoon shot out of the cannon where you're kind of leading with the helmet. But the more you can reach the hands towards the feet, you're getting your lower trapezius muscles engaged. These are very important shoulder stabilizers and very important movers of the oars in the drive phase, especially towards the finish. And then on your inhale, rise up, maybe sweep the arms up. Exhale, back foot to the front foot. Step it out, shake it out, roll the shoulders. And we're going to do that sequence on the other side. So right foot back, or whichever one you didn't do, stepping back. And it could be the back heel up or shortened stance, back heel down, but the front knee bent. Getting that tailbone to reach towards the earth. You might need to bend that back knee to get there. Top of the head, reaching towards the sky. So you created space between the vertebrae with the abdominal muscles and spinal muscles here. And then think about those front hip bones. You can even put your fingers on the front hip bones just to the inside of them. And imagine pulling those front hip bones towards each other. Maybe you feel the muscle underneath your fingers engaging, the transverse abdominis. Breathe. Transverse abdominis, important pelvic and spine stabilizer. It is probably one of the muscles that I give home exercise programs about 50% of my PT clients. So keep that engaged. Spine long, hinge forward from your hips. You might be able to straighten the back knee because now we're not stretching hip flexors. Firm the belly like we did in bird dog, slight chin tuck. Hands reach back in that shot out of the cannon, actively reaching the hands towards your feet, and feel how long the neck gets there. Take a few breaths. Sometimes it's hard to breathe when we've engaged the core like this, but it's important because we need to engage the core a lot. And of course, we need to breathe even more. then we need to engage the core. All right, strong legs, inhale, rise up. Maybe sweep the arms up. Exhale, step it forward, shake it out, roll the shoulders. So we're going to do another movement here with, I'm going to use the yoga block, and I'm going to use a blanket, and I'm using the wall. And the wall is to steady us so that we don't lose balance. So you might want to watch here in the first one or two and then join me, because you'll probably have your back to me. So I'm going to use my blanket and fold it up. This is going to be a little ledge here in front of the wall that the balls of my feet are going to go on. And then I'm going to use the yoga block here. So holding it, putting the balls of my feet on that blanket ledge. Feet are hip distance or a little narrower. And we're bringing that block in between the ankles. So I'm gently squeezing the block, and I'm going to try not to let the block fall out as I lift and lower my heels. So hands are on the wall so that you don't fall over. I'm not leaning, but just supporting. And we're lifting the heels, and then slowly lower the heels back down to the earth. So we lift the heels and slowly lower. So the lowering is 3 to 4 times longer than the lift. So you might lift up on a 1 count and lower on a 4 count. Now the reason for the block is to encourage you, if not force you, to push off through your big toes, as opposed to rolling towards the outsides of the feet and pushing off through the outer toes. If the big toe is stiff, you may not be able to lift very high, or you might not be able to hold the block. But holding the block, making you push off through the big toe, so that when you come into the catch and the heels come up and you start to bend through the toes, you don't rotate your knees out to the sides, causing hip, IT band, knee problems. All right, lower the heels down, drop the block, move it out of the way, shake those legs out a little bit, roll the shoulders. Coming into a little bit of balance. So this is our kind of standing on a balance beam or tightrope type of position. Keep in mind the squishier surface, the more challenging is to balance. You could step off to a harder surface, off your mat. You could be close to a wall here for this one, or have a hand on. So I am standing with one foot directly in front of the other, putting a tiny bend to both knees. It gives me one more joint to react with, the knees to react with. Focus the gaze on a spot straight ahead. Tailbone down towards the earth, top of the head towards the sky. Core spinal engagement, which does help with balance. Breathe. Now, if you're already struggling here, stay with this. Breathe. Gaze focused on one spot. 2 options to add challenge. One is the head turn left and right. Bigger, faster head turns is going to throw you off balance, so maybe slow it down, perhaps smaller head turn. All right, bring the head back to center. So that's one option. The other is that elbow pull that we did from mountain pose. This is going to add a torso and a head turn, which is going to challenge the balance. So we bring the arms forward. We pull one elbow back, look towards that side, bring it forward. Inhale, pull the other elbow back, look towards that side. Exhale, bring it forward here. All right, hips square to the front, maintaining balance. Right, so similar to having to look over your shoulder here and keeping the boat steady. All right, bring it back to center. Remember which foot is forward. Come up, shake out your legs, and we'll do this on the other side. So other foot forward. Balance beam, tightrope, tiny bend to the knees. Focus the gaze on the spot straight ahead. Breathe, relax the shoulders. That spinal lengthening here. Remember, you could stay here. This could already be challenging. If you've had a lot of ankle sprains, if it's a dark room, it can be more challenging to balance. You could add the head turns. right? So now we're playing with, you took that visual feedback, that constant visual feedback away. Now that you don't have the same constant, you could bring the head back to center. You could keep it at head turns. You could stay steady with the head or reach the arms forward. Inhale, pull one elbow back, look towards that side. Exhale, bring it forward. So now it's not just the head rotating, it's the torso, but not through the hips. So hips remain steady and stable. So no rotation, no lateral shifting or tipping. Right now we play with the inner, that's the inner ear and the visual feedback. So feet, ankles, hips having to work harder to maintain. All right, bring it forward, shake it out, roll it out, shake out your arms, your legs. So we are going to make our way down to the floor. I'm going to use my 2 yoga blocks, and I'm going to be kind of perched on my yoga blocks. If your knees, your back, your hips, or whatever don't like this position, I would rather you sit on the front edge of a chair, like so you're sitting perched on the front edge of the chair. So for me, I'm using those 2 yoga blocks here, and I'm coming down onto my shins, and then I've got, that's a little seat, like it's, so it's a little like uh, Norwegian, like kneeling chair thing here. But for some people, this might not feel great on the knees or the feet. You could cramp, this might be a toe cramping position. So I would suggest sitting on a chair or the couch, kind of perched on the front edge, because this is about what's happening at the pelvis. So remember at the beginning, we did sort of a cat-cow. We rounded the whole back and arched it forward here. But instead of doing the whole spine and head movement, we're going to isolate here at the pelvis and the low back. So bring your hands to your side ribs, and your hands here are trying to keep your ribs from flaring and rounding here. So we're going to tip the pelvis backwards. You're tucking the tailbone under, belly button towards spine, but keep the chest and gaze forward. And you'll feel the pressure move behind the sitting bones. And then we tip the pelvis forward, pressure onto the sitting bones, but try not to let the ribs flare. So we tip the pelvis backward, tailbone tucked under, pressure behind the sitting bones, tip the tailbone back, feel yourself rolling over the sitting bones. So it's that kind of roll over here as you're coming out of the finish, making your way towards the catch. As that torso comes more into upright, you're going to have to roll over those sitting bones, tip that pelvis forward to make your way into the catch. So super subtle, and we're obviously slowing it way down, but so that you can get that feeling. You could even practice this in the boat, on the seat, right? You'd have your legs forward, obviously. But I didn't think I'd be able to maintain my balance and do that. All right, bring it back into center. Let the arms go, roll the shoulders. Okay, coming on to your side. So kind of a fetal position here on your side. We're going to stretch those quads. So support the head with the arm or slide a block or pillow underneath. It's the top leg we're doing. So pull that foot behind you, reach back with the hand to find the foot or ankle, or the hem of your pants, or strap around the ankle. So it could be that it's better for your shoulder to use the strap, or your knee or your quad. Think about lengthening the kneecap towards the foot of the mat. Often when we're tight, the knee wants to go up or forward, and that's sort of cheating, or at least the fourth quads doesn't get stretched, so it gets cheated. If you lengthen that kneecap away, it kind of aligns the knee and hip, and then you get all 4 quads, and even this one that goes over the hip joint. That's also a hip flexor. Let that foot go. Roll into your side. Make sure your head's supported and you pull that top foot back. Lengthen the kneecap away from the head. Make sure you're breathing here. You're releasing that foot, rolling onto your back. Now coming up into a bridge, I'm going to place my block between my knees. It could be a rolled blanket if you don't have a block. Heels are lined up with the sitting bones and in relatively close to your buttocks. We're using the block here to keep the knees in line with the hips. You don't have to squeeze hard, just don't let it drop as we rise up. Arms down by the sides, lift your hips and your back up off the ground. Once you're up, tuck the shoulders in closer to the spine and press the arms into the floor. Squeeze those glutes a little extra to get some more hip lift. And try to keep the block from falling out here. Take a couple breaths. When you keep the knees in line with the hips, it encourages that glute maximus here to work. So remember, that's that powerful muscle helping us as we move towards the finish in the stroke or the torso. Lean back, arms out from underneath, coming on down. You can take the block out here and the rest, and you might gently rock those knees side to side. So not only are you working the glute maximus muscles there, you're opening up the hip flexors. You might even be feeling a stretch in your quads. A lot happening in that one. And of course, torso, core, spine stabilizers, and spinal erectors working here. So I'm going to come into a supported bridge now using the block. Could be a foam roller or folded up blanket or towel. Slide this prop under the sacrum, so the area above the more fleshy, above the glute max we just worked, but below the low back. So make sure you're not on the vertebrae of the lumbar spine. Now I'm on the shorter side of the yoga block on purpose. If you want more height, I would suggest doing 2 blocks on the shorter side as opposed to 1 block on the taller side, because then you press through your sacrum and it could strain the sacroiliac joint. Once you're here, convince the buttocks and the low back to relax. We've just been using them a lot, so it might take a little kind of shake of the legs or just a big breath and a exhale to remind them how to let go. So hips higher than the shoulders in this position. And it's a tractioning or a decompressive position for the spine, and mostly for the lumbar spine, the lower back. So gravity and the prop helping us to create space between the vertebrae. So you're taking compression out of the discs there. If you're tight in your hips, your hamstrings, often the back and the low back takes a beating in the catch position. So this might feel good. You could stay with this or add a hip flexor stretch. So that would be straightening out one leg. So you start to open up through hip flexors of that straightened leg. It could be enough already, or you pull the other knee in towards you, holding it, maybe pulling it off to that side a little bit. Take a few breaths, letting gravity do the work. And one reason hip flexors can get tight is, well, a couple reasons. In the rowing stroke, you are using the hip flexors, a lot of hip flexors, in that forward tip of the pelvis, right? So as we come from the finish, going towards the catch, and then we roll over that pelvis, the hip flexors are helping to pull forward. So they get engaged there. And then nowhere in the stroke do they ever open up like this. Do you ever straighten, lay all the way out? So you never get into that stretched position at any time on the boat. All right, we're going to switch sides. So you engage them, maybe somewhat forcefully, and then you never lengthen them all the way out again. So stretching, lengthening the hip flexors, keeping it relatively gentle. It's sort of a counter to being in the boat. Tight, tense, short hip flexors, shortened hip flexors can cause hip pain, knee pain, typically manifest as low back pain. We'll lower both feet to the floor, lift the hips, take that prop out from underneath, coming on down. And we're crossing one thigh over the other, pull the legs towards you, holding ankles, shins, backs of thighs, or use a strap behind the thighs. Relax the shoulders, and maybe you feel that stretch on the buttocks, outer hip of the top leg. And if you prefer, your body prefers the ankle over knee stretch to this, you can do that instead. Same muscles being stretched, different angle. So getting into the glute maximus, right? So if you are activating that glute maximus, it's a good stretch. And piriformis muscles that are sort of the backups to the glute maximus as their secondary job. Switch legs. Relax the shoulders, the neck, the jaw muscles here. Untangling the legs. Decide if there's something you'd like to do before Shavasana. Maybe it's a reclined twist, a different hip stretch, an inversion, something else that might feel missing from your practice or your body is requesting a little bit more of. Feel free to add it in. And then thinking about how you'd like to set up for Shavasana. Legs could be supported on a chair or up the wall. You could have a roll under the neck, releasing tension there, or down the length of the spine. I'm going to do that small little neck roll here. This is also a good time to think about putting on socks, covering up with a blanket, or putting your sweater on so that you can get comfy and you might be able to relax a little bit better. Wherever you've chosen to be, take a moment, adjust. It's worth taking these few moments here so that you can settle in. Perhaps you're noticing the places in your body that connect to the earth. Allowing those parts of your body to feel heavy and weighted. And then the opposite side of the body to feel open, free, light. Take an inhale through the nose. Open the mouth, let out a sigh. And another breath like that. Let the breath go. allowing the body to rest, remembering that rest and even a few minutes rest reminds your nervous system how to calm down so that when you go to sleep at night, it's a familiar sensation. Rest is when you integrate new information into the mind, into the nervous system, your motor control. Rest is when our body heals, repairs, builds muscle. Rest for the next few minutes. Remember, you could stay here resting longer. If you're ready to move on, start to deepen the breath. Invite some gentle movements at the toes, the fingers, the ankles, the wrist. Maybe a full body stretch, arms overhead, legs out. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, let it go. Bend the knees, roll to your side. Pause for a moment on your side. Take a couple more deep breaths here just to build a little more intra-abdominal pressure before we sit. Appreciating your body, your breath, your health, your yoga practice. Press up to a seated position. Thank you all for being here, sharing your practice and energy.